Breaking news, CNN learning tonight that Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee helped fund the research which led to the controversial and, frankly, salacious and disgusting in some of its allegations dossier that detailed alleged Russian efforts to help Donald Trump's presidential campaign. The Washington Post was first to report this. Out front, one of the reporters who just broke the story, Adam Entis with the Washington Post. Adam, good to have you back. So let's just start with the bottom line here. Clinton, the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. What exactly did they do?
Well, I mean, they have a lawyer, and that lawyer went about looking to hire research firms. One of the firms that they hired was this company in Washington here called Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS, in turn, subcontracted out to Christopher Steele, the former British intelligence officer, to help get information about Trump's relationships in Russia. Those reports that Chris Steele produced were then passed back to the lawyer who was representing the Clinton campaign. What we don't really know is how that information was then relayed to the campaign. Our understanding from talking to people who were close to the matter is that those actual Steele reports were not directly handed to the campaign, so we don't really quite understand how the information was passed, who got the information,
right.
And we, obviously we want to know, what they did with that information after they received it.
Right, right, and that's crucial questions. Now, as to the dossier itself, I just want to remind our viewers, look, it's about 30 pages or something. It's obviously widely available out there. We don't talk about it because it hasn't been verified, but we have confirmed that some of the conversations as reported in this dossier between foreign nationals did occur. So some things in it appear to be true, others are completely uncorroborated at this time. What you're saying, Adam, is that it's unclear whether it was finished and packaged as we now can see it and handed to the Clinton campaign or not, right?
Well, I think the answer to that is it was not. These reports were being produced on a regular basis, every few weeks, every few months. He would prepare, Chris Steele would prepare a new report, which he would give to his the people who were paying him, Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS would then want to tell the lawyer for the Clinton campaign, who he's representing, what information was being collected, and that information was then being given to the campaign. The way that was being given is what we don't really understand. How high up in the campaign did that information go? We don't really know. But like you said, the point is that much of what Steele said, or at least some of what Steele said, is not that different from what the intelligence community later discloses in January, which was an effort by, alleging that the Russians were working to try to help Trump. That is one of the main findings of Steele's investigation. So even though, yes, we are revealing here that the Clinton campaign's money and the DNC's money was being used, at least in part, to fund this investigation by Chris Steele, that doesn't mean that what he produced was not accurate, was not inaccurate, or, some of the information was clearly accurate and is borne out by what the intelligence community later disclosed.
Right, which is obviously a crucial point. Now, when you say the money, do you have any idea how much money it was?
No, the people we talked to wouldn't tell us. They told us that the amount of money paid to Fusion GPS was shared between the campaign and the DNC. But we don't know what the dollar figures are, and we don't know exactly how that was broken down between the two organizations. So, Adam,
I want to, the point that you're making here, right? I mean, in whatever word you want to use for this, whether it was intelligence or opposition research, right? Whoever's paying for it, Christopher Steele, this former British intelligence agent, went out and got this information, some of which is true, some of which is uncorroborated. You're also reporting, though, that Fusion GPS, this firm that had been doing research on Trump, had already been doing research, opposition research on Trump during the Republican primaries. Yeah. Okay. Who was paying for that? Was it Ted Cruz?
No, we don't know. We're not sure who that Republican client was. When Fusion GPS was hired by that client, they did not know that Russia was going to be the main focus. At that point, they were hired. Trump was a relatively unknown in Washington. He wasn't disclosing his tax returns. He was, there really wasn't a lot of information out there about his business ties and frankly, his foreign relationships. So they were hired along with other firms to do some research. Initially, they were hired by a Republican client who remains secret. It has not been disclosed. In March of 2016, according to the law firm for the Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS approaches the lawyer representing the campaign and offers to basically have the Democrats continue funding the research that they were already doing on behalf of a Republican client.
Now, did they at that time, Adam, I want to bring in David Challion to this conversation, our political director, but at that time, did the Clinton campaign or the DNC say, we want this to focus on Russia? Or did that naturally happen?
Based on the information I have, I have no evidence to support what you just said. I mean, I think, you know, I'm not exactly sure. I think Steele is brought on board. It becomes a subcontractor to Fusion GPS after the DNC and the Clinton campaign hire Fusion GPS through this lawyer. So it's not clear to me at what point Fusion GPS's investigation through Chris Steele focuses narrowly, most narrowly, on Russia. But keep in mind that Fusion GPS was investigating, outside of what Chris Steele was doing, a lot of other things related to Trump, and also providing that through the lawyer again to the Clinton campaign and to the DNC. So it wasn't just Russia-related material.
So, David Challion, what's your reaction to this?
Well, it is not good news for the DNC and the Clinton campaign to be named and attached to the funding of something that you described in part has borne out and in part included a lot of uncorroborated stuff to date. That being said, we had previously reported, right, that this Oppo research process began on the Republican side, and then Democrats took over funding this opposition research operation. So who would those Democrats be if not the DNC and the Clinton campaign?
Right.
I think we would expect it to be them come the spring of 2016, the people funding opposition research. As you know, Aaron, Oppo research is a staple of presidential campaigns, of all kinds of campaigns. In fact, most candidates begin their campaigns by hiring such a firm to do it on themselves and find out all the potential holes that they may have, vulnerabilities that they may have, that an opponent may come at them with. But obviously, this particular document, as Adam was saying, because there is a significant portion of it that the U.S. intelligence communities and news organizations' reportings have proven true, it raises, obviously, big concerns. It is at the heart of the Mueller investigation, the Hill investigations, and having Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC attached for it is certainly going to give Trump supporters a talking point to try to simply add to the mix that this is political theater, and this will give them an opportunity to say that.
You know it's a lie. Shouldn't you speak up?
That's your job.
But that's your job. You're a United States senator. You're an equal branch of a co-equal branch of the U.S. government.
Wolf, if I went around criticizing a statement that was made by the president or any one of my fellow senators or any one of the congressmen up here or people in Idaho who hold public office, and I stood up and talked every time they talked and said, I don't like this, I don't like that, I'm criticizing, I'd be busy all day long.
Flake
I have my own.
But Senator Flake, and you know Senator Flake
Very well, and he's a good friend and a great guy.
And I know you know Senator Corker. I'm sure he's a good
friend and a great guy.
But when Senator Flake says you're complicit if you remain silent in the face of this, what is your reaction?
That's his view.
What is your view?
That is not my view.
I don't understand why you wouldn't take a position on something as emotional and sensitive.
Look, I've told you, and I'm going to tell you again. I'm not going to go around every time the president or another senator or a congressman or anyone else says something I disagree with, jump up and start criticizing. I'm just not going to do that.
So you say it's the press, the news media, our responsibility to keep the president honest.
Well, there's no question about it.
But the president says, the president hits us all the time. He says we're fake news.
Yeah. I appreciate that, and certainly appreciate his point of view on that. But look, I'm focused on...
You don't agree with him on that, because he's threatened to take broadcast licenses away. You believe in the First Amendment. You believe in freedom of the press.
So I'd like you to respond to that tweet from the president. Is the only reason that you dropped out of the race because you had zero chance of being elected?
Well, I can tell you it's very difficult to be reelected in the Republican Party right now, in Arizona in particular. It doesn't matter so much the policies that you adopt or your votes. It's if you're with the president, and I can't be with the president at all times. I'm sorry. I think that when the president is wrong, you ought to call him out, and sometimes he's wrong.
Did you and Bob Corker coordinate your statements yesterday?
No, I sit with Bob on the Foreign Relations Committee. I've been aware of his concerns, particularly about our foreign policy, and I share those concerns. So we've had those discussions, but he had no idea I was going to do what I did yesterday. Obviously, privately, a number of my colleagues have expressed concern about the direction of our politics and the behavior of the president. I think in the coming months you'll have more people stand up. I think the cumulative weight of all of this, there comes a tipping point where we realize we just can't continue to normalize this kind of behavior. So I do think we'll have more
Finish
people
that first
stand
question
up.
then. You talk about, when we talk about policy initiatives, like I'm thinking of healthcare or, for example, tax reform that have not been completed, at least not yet, on Capitol Hill. The lack of support from somebody like Bob Corker might make that a lot more difficult. Given that, does the president feel like he's winning?
I think he feels like America's winning. I think if you look at some of the progress that's taken place in the first 9 months, despite the fact that the Congress has done very little up until this point, the president has gotten rid of nearly 1,000 regulations that have paved the way for massive job creation and job growth in this country. We're looking at a booming economy. I think those are things that people actually care about. We're looking at the defeat of ISIS, something that this president has led on and worked with our coalition forces to help do. He's created better relationships with countries around the globe. He's bolstered the relationship with NATO and had other countries encouraged in the growth of the amount of money that other countries are participating in that. The historic moment that we saw with the president on his first foreign trip when he was in Saudi Arabia and he spoke in front of nearly 60 Muslim majority countries. These are historic moments that he's done without Congress. Imagine how incredible and how many good things we would be doing if people like Senator Bob Corker got on board and started doing their job instead of doing so much grandstanding on
you
TV.
talk about, when we talk about policy initiatives, like I'm thinking of healthcare or, for example, tax reform that have not been completed, at least not yet, on Capitol Hill. The lack of support from somebody like Bob Corker might make that a lot more difficult. Given that, does the president feel like he's winning?
I think he feels like America's winning. I think if you look at some of the progress that's taken place in the first 9 months, despite the fact that the Congress has done very little up until this point, the president has gotten rid of nearly 1,000 regulations that have paved the way for massive job creation and job growth in this country. We're looking at a booming economy. I think those are things that people actually care about. We're looking at the defeat of ISIS, something that this president has led on and worked with our coalition forces to help do. He's created better relationships with countries around the globe. He's bolstered the relationship with NATO and had other countries encouraged in the growth of the amount of money that other countries are participating in that. The historic moment that we saw with the president on his first foreign trip when he was in Saudi Arabia and he spoke in front of nearly 60 Muslim majority countries. These are historic moments that he's done without Congress. Imagine how incredible and how many good things we would be doing if people like Senator Bob Corker got on board and started doing their job instead of doing so much grandstanding on TV.